Hello, people of destiny from 431, English 431. I wanted to talk a little bit about, here's my hat. I wanted to talk a little bit about the field notes that you're going to start to complete for this course. Now, you all recognize by this point that this is a 4-credit course, and 1 credit of it is what we call the internship. You all have selected an internship and you're ready to go with that. So what do we mean by field notes? Now, this comes generally from qualitative research, ethnography, a form of anthropology, and the basic assumption that ethnographers make is that they do not understand a culture, that they need to immerse themselves in a culture in order to learn its rhythms, the patterns, the ideas, the language of the culture, and so on. Now, this is a little hard for us. I understand that. We've been in school for a long time. Um, we all went to kindergarten, and then we went all the way through 12th grade, and then maybe we took some time off or we didn't, but we went to college, and it feels in some ways like maybe we've never been outside of school, that there's never been a time that we could look at school and the processes of schooling as a kind of an unfamiliar zone. But that's the very thing that we're trying to do in this course from the outset, because what I want us to do is defamiliarize ourselves from the normal rhythms that we become accustomed to and the assumptions that we make about learning, learners, learning to write, and so on. So what I wanted to do very quickly is share with you a couple of screens that I hope we can use in order to understand this a little bit better. Now here I am in our assignments page. This is the assignments page for English 431 for this semester, right? Now what it says very uh, close to the top right here is that part of your work in our 4-unit class is an internship where you'll work out alongside an experienced mentor in our first year writing program. So one helpful way to learn from this experience is to gather data via those field notes. So that's exactly what we've been talking about. And if you need a more practical reason, I'm going to ask that you collate and start working with these field notes for your second small paper in this course, where I really ask you to think about, okay, so how is learning accomplished in groups? The work that you do developing these field notes now will make this paper super easy to write. And the more detail you put in these field notes, the easier those patterns uh, of behavior and the activities of the space will just jump out at you. So basically then what I'm looking for in terms of these field notes is that you will tackle some of the big questions that we might ask about any particular space where people are working with other people, right? What are the activities of that space? What are the things that they're doing? Secondly, what is the language of the workshop? What are the kinds of words or terms that get repeated regularly and through that process take on more meaning? And then finally, what kinds of connections are you making to the readings in our class? How do the readings that we're doing inform what seems to be going on in these workshop groups? And maybe what are the questions that remain? That is, what are the holes that we haven't really plugged yet? What you'll do over the course of the first 8 weeks of the course, not the first week, because the first week we weren't in internships, but starting week 2, is you're going to share these notes in some form in our Google community. It's my hope that you'll have some rough notes, notebook of the kinds of things that you see going on, and then maybe you polish up those notes so that you can turn them in on Sundays. But here's one way to do it, and it could be relatively valuable for you. The field notes that we do really should include certain kinds of details like you see here. That is date, time, place of observation, the sensory impression. Well, okay, forget that, because in a regular semester, we would have face-to-face conversations with people where sensory impressions might become more important. You're pretty much just sort of hearing things and you're seeing things at this point. But specific facts, the numbers, the details of what happens at site, At the site, your personal responses to the people's personal responses to the fact of recording field notes, the words, phrases, again, the language, the summaries of conversation, whatever you can do to capture some of that real language, I think would be great, would be really, really cool. And then finally, questions about people or behaviors at the site that you might want to investigate further. So think about it in this way. You might jot some stuff down, that is the brief words or phrases that you hear people use, as much as possible, maybe just transcribing the kinds of conversations that emerge. You might describe the kinds of things that you see and that you hear and everything you can remember about that occasion. You might do some analysis of what seems to be happening. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And then finally, some reflection on what you learned from being an intern in this space. Now, what you see in that 1, 2, then 3 and 4 step process right there is a movement from what we'd call the objective facts or the descriptions of the places and the people and the activities and so on to more interpretive ways of looking at it. More hermeneutical, you might call it, or analytical ways of making sense of what you've seen. One way to keep those two things straight, that is the descriptions of all the kinds of things that have gone on, and then your interpretations of what went on, is this this discursive object, this strategy called the double entry field note or notebook. And you see very quickly right here that on the left side of the page, you put those observations, the distinctive language, the overheard conversations, descriptions of objects, and so on. You put the things that you see and hear on the left side. Then what do you do on the other side? Your reflections, your analysis, you're looking for patterns, your interpretations of what you see on the right side. So in this way, what you see in different kinds of double entry notebooks is a very clean way of separating what happened from what you're thinking about it. What stands out to you? What seems interesting? And if in those field notes, then you have a rich collection of different kinds of hours that you've spent with this workshop group and the different kinds of things that they did, then that is more than enough material to mine for that second small paper, where you're really going to be thinking about how does writing improve via group work? What kinds of collaboration do you see? What kinds of learning about writing seem to be happening? What role is the mentor playing? What role are you as the intern playing? And how are students helping each other? So in this way, what I'm hoping that we'll see are patterns of behavior in which you are keying in on them as a subculture, right? So this, in short, this has been a longer video than I thought. But this, in short, is a kind of some of the rationale behind this assignment and some of the ways that you might do it. I fully intend to give everybody all the credit that I can. I just want to make sure that there are some rich and interesting field notes happening in Google Currents so that we all can respond to what we see going on and compare in different kinds of ways how these groups are starting to work with each other, how members of these groups are starting to work with each other on writing. Okay, so thank you.